Hi, welcome. This is Philosophy 70, Introduction to Philosophy at Chaffey College. I am Dr. King, your instructor, and we'll go over a few things in this. By now, you've had a chance to explore Canvas. Obviously, you can work it. You have logged in. You have seen announcements. Some of you may still be having problems, and if that's so, when you go to the Canvas page on your left side, there will be a menu of different options, and one of them will be Student Support Hub. That gives you everything you'd ever want to know about Canvas. It also gives you information about things like our counseling system, if you're having problems with figuring out what to do, even if you're having problems with your social life, whatever it might be, there are resources there. So make sure you check that out. Hopefully you've also gotten the book. This is the book. It's called Intro to Philosophy, Philosophy 70. It doesn't actually have a name, but it looks like this, except it doesn't have the desk copy sticker on there. That's just for me. Our bookstore has multiple copies of used and new, and you can buy or rent. So the cheapest way to go would be to rent a used copy. You might find from another student a used copy and be able to pick it up cheaply, but generally options like going to the library and reading the copies I have on reserve are not currently available. So what is this course about? Well, it is Intro to Philosophy, and if you've looked at the first page on Canvas, the home page, you will see some descriptions. And so it tells you about the course, what you need to have to be eligible. It lists the texts and readings. It also lists the course objectives and student learning outcomes, so you can see all of that. It also has a breakdown of grades and how you earn those grades. So your participation will be 10%. The way I gauge participation will be, first, I will look on Canvas. Canvas records every time you log on to the course. And when you do, it also keeps track of the amount of time. So if you're not logging on to read announcements, or you have logons, but you've spent, a minute, half a minute, whatever, that's not going to really make it for participation. You need to be going on and checking into not only the files that I might have uploaded, but any videos. There will also be 4 exams worth 15 points each. Exams will be short answer, fill in the blank, maybe very short essay, and then a final exam which is worth 30 points. Also on the front page you can see how the points break down and my policy on cheating. Since this is a distance education class, you will be taking the exam at home. I am going to ask that you please don't use notes or your book or anyone else, that you actually take the test. The test will be timed, so it will be enough time for you to be able to finish the test, but not enough time to be looking up answers in your textbook because you didn't do the reading. There's also my policy on cheating, which you should make sure you read, and that will apply for exams, of course. Then at the bottom of that is the syllabus. This is the course by course or class by class list of what we're going to be doing and what's due. So the first thing was to check in. That was how I made sure that you were there, you were logged in, you answered my Canvas email, and you did not get dropped. You had a time limit. Then there's Intro to Course. Well, this is the lecture on the Intro to Course, telling you about the course. And then you will see on the rest of the list all of the different things that we will be covering week to week. You need to have completed the reading for each of those days by the date that is listed on the syllabus. You'll see the exams are listed in bold, so you can be aware of those. I will also send out a notice, and exams will work as you will get a notice that there's an exam coming, and then it will tell you, this is available from, 12 to 12:30 or whatever the timeline might be. So in regards to the reading and watching the video lectures, one of the nice things about distance education is that there's no actual schedule. I mean, we don't have actual meetings. I will hold Zoom meetings occasionally, but for the most part, you're going to read the material and then listen to the lecture on the material. And I recommend that as you watch the video, you have your textbook there in front of you, and you can take notes, of course, or you should take notes from your reading and well, from viewing the lecture. If you have questions, well, send them to me. So you can post them in Canvas and I will get them. Bear in mind, I don't answer any emails or any other communication after 6 p.m. or on weekends. So the class was only supposed to meet twice a week. I am holding, well, I will be checking emails and such 5 days a week, but not weekends and not in the evenings. I also won't check them before 11 a.m. So that's how you get hold of me, and everything that you really need to know at this point is posted on the home page. So that's where we're at. So now let's go ahead and talk about philosophy. Let me just pause it here for a second. So what is philosophy? A lot of people sign up for a philosophy course simply because it's one of the requirements, and you might have signed up and have no idea what this is about. This is intro, so this is the place to start. The word philosophy comes from two Greek words, philia and sophia. Philia means love, and sophia means wisdom. So philosophy is the love of wisdom. Philosophers are lovers of wisdom, and that might sound a little pretentious, but it's kind of the truth. What we are trying to do is to get to a deeper understanding, the deeper meaning of any of the things we're trying to investigate, because philosophy is really about investigation. It's not about necessarily finding the answers, but more about searching for the answers. There are a lot of different branches of philosophy. We'll talk about that in a second, but let's first talk about where the name philosophy came from. Again, it's a combination of the words philia and sophia, and it was invented for a man named Thales. Thales was born in 625 BCE, so 2,600 years ago plus, and died in 547 BCE. He did something that was so astounding to the people in Greece that they created this term, philosopher. They said Thales is surely a lover of wisdom. Now, what he did was he predicted an eclipse, and he predicted it accurately. To us, that might not seem like such a big deal, but to the Greeks, it was a big deal. They had the technology to have done it, to, mapping the stars and the movements of the stars and such, and the planets, of course, and they had mathematics, so they could have figured out. Why did it astound them when Thales did this? Well, because he used the mapping of the stars and planets and mathematics to figure it out. But the problem was, or the impressive thing was, is that 2,600 years ago in ancient Greece, the belief system of the people was that everything that happened was because a god was doing it. If there was an earthquake, a god did it. If the sun rose, a god did it. If there was an eclipse, a god did it. So, can you predict what a god is going to do? Of course not. So, he predicted that there would be an eclipse. He predicted it accurately, and they were amazed because you can't predict what a god is going to do. So he got the term lover of wisdom, philosopher, because they said, we know Thales is not a god, right? We know he investigated very deeply and figured this out. And then here's the main thing that happened, why his activity was important. It made people look at what they thought about things and reevaluate them. They started to think that maybe there was something different going on than the gods behind everything. Maybe there were just natural laws. Maybe there were natural occurrences. Maybe things were random and no one was doing it. So that was the beginning of philosophy. Unfortunately, it sits there for about 200 years, and then we have a man named Socrates. Socrates was born in 469 and died in 399 BCE, and he is the father of philosophy. So Thales was the first philosopher, but Socrates is the father of philosophy because he started the whole method of inquiry that we use in philosophy. In fact, his method is called the Socratic method. It's named after him. This is a way of investigating questions by asking, why are you doing that? What are you doing? And you would answer, and then he would come back with more questions. Well, do you think that's the right thing to do? And you would say yes, and then he would say, well, why do you think it's the right thing to do? Do you think that you know more than the law, for example? Whatever it might be. So it was a dialectical method, discussion, back and forth. This is still one of the primary methods, definitely the main method of doing philosophy. Ordinarily, in a face-to-face class, that would be going on extensively. We're not doing that. This is distance ed, so we're going to try and do what we can. Oh, my dog just walked in the room. Okay, you can't really see him. Anyway, so Socrates was looking at examining your life. In fact, he had there was a quote attributed to him. He said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." In other words, if you just go through your daily business, you come home and you just chill or whatever, and you don't really look at anything, think about anything, investigate anything, you're wasting your life. An unexamined life is not worth living. He wants us to fully understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And with that, we are looking at a lot of different subjects, and that makes up the field of philosophy. So philosophy is a overall heading for a bunch of different subjects of investigation. So we have epistemology and metaphysics and ethics and social political philosophy, philosophy of religion, philosophy of mind, philosophy of science, philosophy of language, logic and argumentation, determinism and free will and identity. There are more. We could go on for hours, but those are the main ones, some of which we will be covering in class, some we will not. So I will go through these and explain each one. Each branch has particular questions that are trying to be answered. Again, we're trying to find the answer. We might get to it. We might have a good answer. We might not. But it's the investigation that really makes the difference. It is transformative. It makes us understand the world better. It makes us wiser. And that's what philosophers are doing, loving wisdom. So the branches. Well, we start off with epistemology. Epistemology is actually one we will be covering in our course. Epistemology means theory of knowledge, and it's about what do we know. In fact, our first little lesson, rather than overview here, will be about what we know. So epistemology asks questions like, what do we know? How do we know it? Can we be sure of anything? I mean, I claim all sorts of things, that I know this and I know that, but can I be sure? I know that right now my car is out in the garage, but how do I know that? Well, I left it there, but how do I know it's still there? Well, I haven't heard anyone break in and, no alarms have gone off. But how do I know the car even exists in the first place? These are the questions we're going to start off with. After epistemology, we will be moving not to metaphysics, which is listed as one of the branches, but we will be moving to the determinism versus free will discussion. But let me talk about metaphysics, because when I gave you the list, that was next on the list. Metaphysics means beyond physics. Currently, the term is used, we talk about things that are metaphysical, and what we mean are things that are spiritual, or they have to do with, aura readings and crystals and those kind of things. That's not what metaphysics and philosophy is about. Metaphysics and philosophy is about the nature of reality. What's real? So it ties closely with epistemology, and metaphysics will pop up, throughout the course, but we're not going to cover an actual section, and I haven't assigned a reading for metaphysics. But I want to know what's real. Is what's real the things that I can touch and feel? Are they things that I imagine or think about? What makes up reality? And then once I say, well, I think it's real because I can touch it and feel it, I'm going to still ask, well, how do I know? Because there are things that I think I can touch and feel that turn out to not be there. Starting to see why this can be kind of confusing? Don't worry, we'll get there. We'll get through it. After metaphysics on the list here that is on your first page, we have ethics. Ethics, to me, is the most important branch of philosophy. Ethics is about what kind of person you should be. It asks the question, what kind of person should I be? How should I treat others? If we lived in a world where there was no one else, we were the only living things, we wouldn't need to worry about ethics. We could do what we wanted and wouldn't have to worry about harm or doing anything wrong to others. But we don't live in the world like that. We live in a world with other living things, and some of them are people, and some of them treat us badly, and we don't like it, and we need to figure out whether that was a right thing that they did or a wrong thing. And we're going to get several different sections or several different authors trying to explain how to determine an action on whether it's right or wrong. Again, I think this is a very important section in philosophy because it answers a primary question. How should I live my life? What kind of person should I be? Next is socio and political philosophy. There's a difference between social philosophy and political philosophy. Social philosophy asks questions like, what kind of society should we have? In fact, it actually starts with a question asking, should we have society? Okay. Once we say, yes, we should have society, and there are philosophers who say philosophy is not natural, society is not natural, and we shouldn't live with others. But once we decide that we want to have a society, then our questions are going to be, what should it look like? Should it be everyone is free to do what they want? Should we have some sort of governance? If we decide that in our society we need some sort of governance, then we move from social philosophy into political philosophy. Political philosophy asks questions like, who should be in charge? Why? Is it because they're the most powerful, because they're the strongest, the richest, the most bloodthirsty? Were they born into royalty? What are the reasons that this person or a small group of people is given the power to rule? And then one of the questions also is, why do we listen? Think about it right now. I'll give you a second. Why do we follow the rules now in our modern society? I'll take a drink while you think. Most of you are going to say, we follow the rules because we are concerned or worried about punishment. So the government has the ability to punish us to different degrees, depending on what kind of government. And we are afraid of that punishment, and so we stay in line. Is that really the best way to follow the rules, to follow the laws? It doesn't seem like it really is, because what happens is then that we wind up disregarding the rules if we think we're not going to get caught, right? For example, texting while you're driving. Okay. It's against the law. The fine for it so far doesn't seem to be horrible. And we look around while we're driving, and there's nobody, no cop around. And so we text and we wind up driving, we're like this and we're looking down at our phone and we get by with it. We try it again and we keep getting by with it. And so it reinforces that we can do that. But is that really the way we want society to run? Do we want to have a society where people break the rules if they think they can get away with it? What's that mean? Well, that could mean then, if we have a society like that, that when it's the middle of the night and very dark and no one's around, somebody might come and break into your house or your garage or whatever, your car, and steal your stuff because they know no one's there to see them and they can get away with it. That's clearly not the kind of society we want to have. So we will investigate those questions. We also have the determinism versus the free will debate. So what's going on here is that free will says you choose your actions freely, right? You can do whatever you want. You choose to drink water or soda. That's up to you. The determinist side of this debate says you're not free to choose those things, that whatever you choose is actually determined by other factors. So maybe you choose, so-called choose, the determinist would say, to drink water because you've been drinking soda all day and you've had too much sugar or too much caffeine. So there is a determining factor. We will discuss this determinism versus free will right after epistemology and before ethics. And I think it is a very interesting discussion. A lot of people find it to be life-changing, so I'm anxious to get into that. We also have things like philosophy of mind, and philosophy of mind asks the questions, the body is a physical thing, and the mind is a non-physical thing. It's a thought. So the brain is physical, but the mind is non-physical. How do those two things interact? We will get into that very quickly in epistemology, because epistemology, a philosopher named René Descartes, was the one who started that field of philosophy of mind by accident. There's another part of philosophy of mind which is trying to map out the brain. Basically, it's trying to map out all of the M fibers and the C fibers that we have in our brain so that you can go to the doctor and you say, "Doctor, I have a pain to the 8th degree in C fiber M14." And the doctor will know, oh, that's right here in the middle of your arm, and how much it hurts. The problem that they discovered when they started to do that is that everybody's brain map is a little bit different. So if I go to the doctor and say my C14 firing, and I mean right here, he might think I mean right here, and somebody else it might be, whoops, up here. So that mapping project didn't work out quite as successfully as they thought, but still it mapped out parts, and we have clusters that they were able to identify. So we know a lot about which part of your brain controls what function, and so your speech center is right up here. It's called Broca's, and if that gets damaged, if you get punched in the head, right there, or let's say you get shot with an arrow in the head right there, you may lose your ability to speak or your ability to understand language. So philosophy of mind has been a big help in that as well. We have philosophy of language. Philosophy of language we won't actually be covering in the course, but philosophy asks the question, can we actually say or mean anything when we say things? So if I ask you to think of a car, everybody stop and think of a car. Some of you may have thought of a truck. Well, you probably thought of a truck because that's the vehicle you drive. Or some of you may have thought of a motorcycle because that's the vehicle you drive. Even though I said car, in our brain we associate a lot of different ideas. So when we talk about things like cars, what you hear is the vehicle that transports me. Okay? So is language really getting through? Now, for those of you who thought about cars, did you think about a Mazda? Because I meant a Mazda. Did you think about a Mazda MX-5? Because that's really the car I was thinking about. Was it silver? Because I was thinking about that. So in other words, through language, I am trying to take the thoughts in my head and convey them to you. And when I say car, I wanted you to get the idea of a Mazda MX-5 that is silver gray. If you didn't, well, then clearly something's wrong with the language. Car doesn't give us enough information. So you need to add to it. And basically then we just keep adding words. So I say Mazda, and you may picture a different kind of Mazda. I say MX-5, and maybe you know what that is, and you can picture it. But and then I've got to tell you the year, and I say, oh, it's silver gray, and we all have different color variations in our mind. So I could keep going on. Oh, there's a little damage on the oh, what's that thing? The splash guard. You know, all of these different things. That's what I meant. But did you get that? So philosophy of language is trying to figure out, can we actually be really accurate with our words? It's not looking really good. So what it's looking like so far is that we have a bunch of shared experiences. So, well, this should be blank, but if I hold up this piece of paper, well, we've all learned what a piece of paper is, and we've seen them in all sorts of shapes and colors. This is a white piece of paper. Okay. Well, we've all learned what white means. If it were a different color, we would all know what that was. Whether you're using it in English or some other language, you all learned what to call this experience. And that's the thing. We have named our experiences. I see a piece of white paper. I drink from my Del Taco cup. I have a blue elbow rest for when I'm typing. Those kind of things. How did I learn it? Well, somebody probably told me. I certainly learned things like blue and white and drink when I was very, very young. I learned terms like wrist rest or elbow rest when computers started getting developed and people were spending time on keyboards. So we learn things and we express those things that we've learned through language, but the language is really just kind of a placeholder. We, again, don't cover this in class that much, but it is something that is available. You know, you can find this material online. Let's see, I'll do one more. Identity theory. Identity theory asks the question, what gives me the identity throughout time? In other words, everything changes. Things decay, things fall apart, things die off, right? The cells in your body in a 7-year period, every single one of them is replaced by another cell at least once. So if you're 14, everything's been replaced at least twice. If you're 21, 3 times, and so on. So for most of you, your cells have been replaced many times or several times, and you still call yourself whatever you call yourself, okay? I am Barbara King, but my cells have replaced themselves, been replaced, including my brain cells, many times. I'm very old, and so many times I have replaced my cells. Now, am I still me? Well, sure, but why do I get to say that? A lot of times people say, well, you are who you are because of your thoughts and your memories. You know, what's going on in your mind. I'm like, okay, so I am a bundle of thoughts. I'm a bundle of experiences. I'm a bundle of memories. That sounds okay. That's good. But What happens if I lose those thoughts? For example, if I'm in the hospital and I'm sick, and the nurses and doctors come in and say, hi, hi, Barbara, how are you doing? And I'm conscious and I'm talking to them. They know who I am, right? But what happens then if I have a bad turn? I go into a coma and maybe I'm brain dead, right? All of my thoughts, all of my memories, gone. Do they come into the hospital room and say, who's that? Right? No, of course not. They're looking at my body and saying, well, I'm still Barbara King. But am I? I'm the body of Barbara King, but the thing that I used to say made me me, my bundle of perceptions, my bundle of thoughts, that's gone. So now I'm just cells that keep dying. Like we lose thousands of cells per day. And then we do things that increase the loss. If you slap your hands together, you kill a certain number of cells on your hand. If you have alcohol or other drugs, you kill brain cells. Brain cells die on a regular basis anyway, so we don't want to speed those along. But the thing is, your body is constantly changing. Your perceptions are constantly changing. And so in the field of identity, they're asking, how come you still call yourself who you are or what you are? It's kind of like if you had a boat. This is one of the analogies they use a lot. If you had a boat and you took off a board and replaced it with a new board, and then you took off another board and replaced it with a new board, and you go through the entire boat and you keep replacing every piece. Once you've replaced every piece, is it the same boat? Not a single piece of it was the original. Is it the same boat? So identity is asking questions like that. We really won't get into that into class, but some of these subjects that I've mentioned that we won't do a formal chapter on in the class, they'll come up in other sections. So I've given you a list of the more common ones, explanations for them. I've given you the main questions asked in them. The nice thing about Distance Ed is that since this is a video, you can rewind and play that down because you want to get that list. Okay, so I'm about to wrap up, but here are a couple of things that you need to know before I do wrap up. So your first reading is going to be Plato, and it's Plato's views on epistemology. So what's epistemology? Again, the word, it means the theory of knowledge, and it's asking what can we know and how do we know? So he is going to look at his version of explaining how we know what we know and how we can be certain. Plato is a rationalist. There are two main views in epistemology: empiricism and rationalism. Empiricism uses experience, and rationalism uses reason. So Plato's going to tell us that the things that we know through experience don't count because we can be mistaken. So he's a rationalist. The things that we grasp through our mind are the things that count. Two other terms you need to know for your reading. You'll come across the term a posteriori. Okay. A posteriori, your book tells you, means what comes after. It actually means knowledge that comes after experience. So you want to write that down so you can refer to it. Let me put that together then. The empiricists use experience to claim knowledge. So they are a posteriori. They are looking to knowledge that comes after or through experience. The other Latin term you want to know is a priori, which means, well, your book tells you it means what comes before, but we want to use it to mean what knowledge that comes before experience. So the rationalists use reason. That makes their studies a priori. They are looking at the things that we know before experience. The things that we know purely through the mind. Things that we grasp through reason. Maybe it's something that we're born with or some other intuition, but it is rational. So with that being said, jump into the first reading of Plato. Let's see, let me look at the syllabus here. So I've just asked you to read the part 1, pages 3 through 6, which gives you a little overview of philosophy. And then Theory of Knowledge with Plato, pages 25 through 47. If you're confused by the page numbers, please don't be. The page numbers I'm referring to are these ones up in the corner. The smaller page numbers down here refer to page numbers in the original print that this was taken from. So you can ignore those and look at the page numbers. The book is essentially written or edited to put together in the way that I use it. So you can just really start at the beginning here and open it up and just read, until you get to the end of Plato. And then after that, you're going to open it and read Descartes until you get to the end of him. So again, it's all in the order that I use. Okay, so that's it for today. If you have questions, first please go back and review this video. And if you have big problems, you can drop me an email. Remember, I don't answer after 7 p.m. or on weekends. So until next time, bye.